The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Welcome back to the third episode of our Retro Rangers podcast, where we're talking about our favorite Rangers of all time. I'm here with Marc Weissman and Isaak. I'm your host, George Grimm, and we're up to our goalies. And then we're going to do our GMs and coaches and broadcasters. So, okay, take it away.
Well, where do you start? Eddie Giacomin.
Eddie Giacomin.
He was in our lifetimes, really, the first franchise goalie they had.
Right.
And just an outstanding battler.
Right.
And, of course, when he came up, it was in the days before goalies wore masks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just a great player.
Yeah.
Fan favorite.
Yeah.
A battler.
Yeah.
If you think about it, too, he like you were saying, he came up when there were no masks, and yet his style was to charge out of the net, right? It's not like it was like, I have no mask on, and I'm just going to hide here in the crease. Yeah. You know, he actually played a very aggressive goalie if he was wearing a mask, let alone without.
Yeah. And at a time when most goalies weren't great puck handlers, he was a great puck handler.
Yeah, he used to go run into the corner and get the puck. Yeah.
Yep.
They used to call him a goalie a go-go because he used to stay into the corners.
Yep. And he was the first goalie I saw take a shot to try and score a goal in an empty net goal.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
He's probably very happy he didn't play when there was a trapezoid.
Oh, yeah.
I dare say.
Can you imagine?
We'll be talking about that in a future episode.
I'm sure we will.
Which brings us to...
Eddie was backed up by Gilles Villemure, who was quite a good goalie in his own right. I'm old enough to know that when I was a little kid, my father took me to the old garden many times, and one of those games, Gilles Villemure was playing goal because Jacques Plante was hurt, and Gilles Villemure didn't have his mask on. He didn't have that smiling mask on. And Gilles anytime the Rangers played Chicago, Gilles probably had a better record against Chicago than Eddie. And there were quite a few times where I think Emil went with Eddie because he had loyalty to him. But there were times when Gilles might have been a better choice. But, and, you know, Gilles helped Eddie win the Vezina that year. They shared it, but because Eddie played like almost every game there before Gilles came along, and then kind of split the season. So they were both rested. So.
Yeah, I mean the bad thing for Gilles Villemure was he became a Ranger property when NHL teams only carried one goaltender.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it was around back then, he would have won the Jennings Trophy. You know, there would have been more playing a certain number of games for the team that had the best goals against, as opposed to the best goalie. So that's partly why they created the two different trophies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
John Davidson. Who's got something to say about John Davidson?
Well, he wasn't.
Him coming to New York is what precipitated Eddie Giacomin's departure, because it was towards the end of Giacomin's career.
That's right.
But Emil Francis needed to bring in a young goalie to be the understudy.
Yeah.
And JD was the guy.
Yeah. And Emil was upset because he couldn't play JD at home. Because any goal that he would let in, the fans would start yelling, Eddie, Eddie.
Yeah.
But, that was one of the reasons why he waived Eddie. But early in his Ranger career, I think JD was resented by a lot of Ranger fans.
Oh, yeah.
They can play. but he was a very good goalie in his own right. He had that great playoff run.
Oh yeah, of course.
In '79.
Yeah.
Had his knees held up better, he probably
right, exactly.
Good career, and
yeah,
I think people love him now because of all the broadcasting work he did.
Right.
And as good as a goaltender as John Davidson was, he was an outstanding color man.
Oh, of course.
Which we'll get to.
Oh, yes, exactly. No, JD, I remember in '79 when we started winning, it must have been like the second series against Philly. I came up with the idea. I didn't have a jersey back then yet, so I took a T-shirt and I wrote Davidson with 30 on the back of this white T-shirt with a magic marker, and I was like, I'm going to wear this whenever I watch a game. And that was back when the Rangers were on MSG, but then when they played the Islanders, those were on Sports Channel. And my uncle had a friend who had Sports Channel. He didn't have it, so his friend was actually an Islander fan. So I had to go to this Islander fan's house just to watch the games that I was wearing. And I remember the game where Bobby Nystrom scored in overtime after JD came flying out of the net to try to get the puck. And I got home, I took the T-shirt off, I threw it on my bed. It was the first time I ever cried after a game. I was about 13, 14. And but I loved it. I mean, that was it. I was more upset that it happened. I wasn't really mad at him for trying to do that. I was just like, wish it had worked. So, but JD was phenomenal. Like you said, if he really didn't have he literally carried that team on his back, so his knees started to go. I mean, it was just
knees and back.
Yeah, and front page of the New York Post when they beat the Islanders, that was him. So. He was definitely.
Yeah, I was living in Rochester, New York then, and those games weren't on TV in Rochester until I got to the finals. The best I could do is listen to the radio broadcast at night, on AM, and the skip would allow me to listen to the game. 300 plus miles away.
That's pretty good.
And then I think Marc, you and I have John Van Beesbrook.
Yeah. Love Beezer.
Yep. When he first came up, wow, a kid from the United States is the Rangers starting goalie.
Yeah,
and he's
right.
doing a great job too.
Yeah. Yeah, he won his first game. I remember it was against Colorado, the Rockies, 2-1. I remember thinking, who is this guy? Kind of like the way Hank came in. Now you were just like rookie out of nowhere. I mean, it just looked solid.
Back when I was doing Sportsnet, I was very proud of myself because I could spell Van Beesbrook and Ristolainen.
Exactly. I know. I had I was watching something the other day with a friend of mine, and they're like, his name doesn't even fit on his jersey. Spills down over to his arms or whatever. It was so funny. Van Beesbrook. And then '86, he was just a wall again. That run, he played really. What I never thought of until recently, they went. They beat Washington and Philly, and then they were playing Montreal. They were playing Patrick Waugh, who was a rookie at that point. And then then Beezer gets traded or picked in the expansion draft, ends up playing Waugh in the finals, as a Panther. I don't know why. I never realized they actually had already faced each other in the playoffs, in our series. And of course, Waugh won both of those. But no, Van Beesbrook, I feel like, Mike Richter was just absolute phenomenal, and there's no question that he was the right choice going forward when they had to decide, after Nielsen was trying to basically rotate them every other game. But if that wasn't the circuit, if Beezer was still our guy, I think same Hall of Fame future team in front of Van Beesbrook, I think we still win the Cup. I think he could have been, with that team, he would have been a Stanley Cup winning goalie as well.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah,
I mean, think about what he did. I mean, with Florida, he took Florida to the final. They weren't nearly as loaded as we were. You know, it's like, so I just, you know, you never know. It's just one of those things. But I feel like, you know, I don't have to take anything away from Richter. I mean, he was just phenomenal, obviously. But I just feel like, you know, there's certain goalies you look at and you think, wow, in that environment, in that circumstance, in that spot, I think, you know, they probably would have pulled it off as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mike Richter. You've been talking about him. He's my all-time favorite Ranger goalie. I would have to say that Lundqvist is the best Ranger goalie I've seen in my lifetime. But Richter won us a cup, so he's my favorite. I mean, you know.
I think it's hard to compare. I mean, let's face it, what else can you say? You know, they won the cup with Mike Richter, and he seems to be a tremendous guy. But you know, he played more of a hybrid style between butterfly and stand-up, whereas by the time Henrik Lundqvist got to New York, it was all butterfly. Right. The style of goaltending had changed.
Yeah. But even when you think about it, even when Richter was doing the butterfly style, he was still out further. Like Hank tended to play much deeper in his net.
Yeah, very.
So you know, but I think what's like, and even I think Leach again said, you know, when asked who took advantage of their athletic ability and their, you know, physiology better than anyone, he said Richter. And Richter made the most of what he was given, you know, as far as physical ability, because he made a lot of, you know, there were a lot of acrobatic stops that, you know, you would say are not technically sound. That's why when I think, you know, to me, Hank was the most technically sound goaltender that I've ever seen. But, you know, those sort of, you know, those other saves, I don't know, that have no business being stopped kind of thing.
Sure.
That's, you know, those kinds of things.
But, again, you also have to remember Mike Richter was a smaller player.
Good point. Good point.
Right? He was 5'11". Lundqvist, while not a big goalie, was 6'1". Those 2 inches make a difference.
Yeah, that's a good point. Whoops.
Okay, go ahead. Hello? Yeah. Yeah, we're still on.
That's what I wanted to know.
Okay, go ahead. That was Ralph's.
Yeah, it sounded like I recognize his voice. He's like, "Why are we still on it?"
All right. So
anyway, so we started. You know, we've kind of discussed Mike Richter and Henrik Lundqvist. One rolled into to the other,
which happens a lot.
Yep. And you know, as far as Lundqvist, George said he's the best goalie he's ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, to be able to go from Lundqvist to Shesterkin, obviously Shesterkin hasn't had a full career yet, but he appears to be the real deal.
Every time I hear,
I just worry about the butterfly style. I just don't like it. I'm afraid these guys are going to get hurt. I'm just not a big fan of the butterfly style, but
I don't mind it when it's a player coming straight at you. But what I never understood is the whole. I mean, it's like simple geometry. When there's a player coming down and he's shooting from the circle, coming out to cut down the angle makes a lot more sense and is a lot easier than staying where you are, dropping, and then hoping your glove's quick enough to stop a top corner shot. I mean, there's a lot more. There's a lot more to it than that as a parent of a former goaltender. It's not that butterfly-style goalies are not encouraged to come out and cut the angle down.
It's that Henrik Lundqvist chose not to be too aggressive.
I see. Good point. That's a good point.
Because he felt his reflexes were fast enough. If you ever heard him in an interview, he always felt that by staying back, it gave him more time to read the shot and react to it.
Right. That's
as opposed to commit.
Right. But it's funny,
we're going to see it this coming season with Jonathan Quick, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
He's more of a scrambler the way Mike Richter was, the way Tim Thomas was in Boston.
Right.
When you have a goalie like that, you need defensemen who can clean up the garbage that they leave behind. They'll make that first stop, but then it's up to your D to clean up the mess, to get the puck out of there.
Right.
It's good that you mentioned that about Hank's style, because I do remember, because Van Beesbroek played that way early in his career where he was back, and you could see as he got older, he started to come out more. He started to realize, you know what, I don't have the reflexes that I used to have, so he changed his game to sort of adapt to that. And I guess I was always kind of waiting for Hank to do that.
He started to. He just didn't come out as far.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
As he aged, Benoit Allaire had him try to play out a little further to help cut down the angle a little more.
Right.
But the problem is when you come out, you have to be able to get back to the post.
Right.
And that's the thing. Butterfly goalies, they rely on their edges of their skates a lot more than the old stand-up goalies do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right? I mean, we see it now the way the goalies play, you know, where they do that power slide by planting the foot near the post to push across the ice, even though they're still down sliding on the pad. So,
you know, you're right. In a way, when you think about it, I know we're getting sort of off onto this stuff, but if you were to be a goalie who's going to play the more traditional way and come out, you're basically relying on your defenseman a lot more because you don't have the ability to just move across. If there's a pass across or behind or backdoor, it's a lot harder. You know, that's where a backdoor play is a lot easier to stop if you're basically sitting in your net.
Yeah.
So if you're, but if you have defensemen who can pick up that backdoor, then you could afford to come out. You know what I mean?
So on the subject of goalies and goaltending, right? Steve Valiquette, who constantly, as an analyst, talks about the cross-slot pass. If you've come out too far as a goalie, when you have to go across the net to try and take the shot that they passed across the center line, right? The midpoint in the ice, if you're out of your net, you have to go a much greater distance.
Exactly. That's probably the reason why it's not happening as much as it used to. Yeah.
And if you watch the goalies, when they do that, they tend to go sideways and backwards towards the post.
That's right.
Because it allows them to recover some of the space between where they are and where the goal is.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Since we all picked Neil Smith and Emil Francis as our coach and GMs, why don't we just skip that and go on to the broadcaster?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Time is tight.
Sure.
All right. Play-by-play guy. I would say sentimental choice would be Win Elliott, who was my first Ranger broadcaster. They were great to listen to. I walked once from Port Authority to the Old Garden with him and my father once, and he was eating a hot dog. And he was great.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Great guy.
Was he TV or radio?
He used to tell stories about how hockey got its name. The Indians used to play frozen horse turds and bent branches, and when they would get hit by the horse turd, they would yell out "Hoagie," which means hockey. So, and then he would tell us he was a good broadcaster. He and this was before replay and everything. So he used to do everything by himself, and between periods, he used to reenact goals just with body language, and it was good. But probably my favorite would be Jim Gordon, because he was strictly business, and he was a very good broadcaster.
Well, Jim Gordon had a day job of being a regular news broadcaster.
Right. He used to sleep if the Ranger game went late. He used because he was on early in the morning on the radio. He used to go to the radio station and sleep on the floor, so he would be there for the morning.
Really? Yeah. Oh my God.
So
I just liked him because to me he seemed like it was like if one of the three of us was doing a game. He got he just got so, I mean, whether he was rooting for the Rangers, it didn't really matter. He got so excited about things that we would always get excited for, and it was just, I don't know. I think he had some really legendary calls, like 79, the clock went down, and just, I don't know, and short and sweet. It wasn't a lot of verbiage to go through. It'd be like shot, save, rebound, save, and you just, but it would just get your heart like going. I mean, he was just so exciting to listen to. I just
somebody interviewed him once, and he actually said that the first hockey game he ever broadcast was the first hockey game he ever saw. So that's amazing,
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I divvied them up between TV and radio, and for me, radio, because when I was a kid growing up, other than the odd Saturday night broadcast on WOR, you couldn't watch the Rangers living in New York City. So for me, it was Marv Albert on the radio. And what I always loved about Marv Albert doing hockey was the cadence of his call accelerated as the play got into the offensive zone.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you felt the rush just from the fact that he was speaking more quickly.
Yeah.
The voice of my youth.
Yep. Mine too.
Yep. And I would be remiss not to mention Howie Rose, who started just filling in for Marv Albert when Marv Albert had to do other broadcasts, because he had started doing national broadcasts for NBC for basketball. Mm-hmm. And Howie, other than the Matteau call, did just an outstanding job as a play-by-play man.
He was almost like a mixture that he got as excited as Jim Gordon, but he had that sort of efficiency and cadence building that Mark got. I mean, he just like, you could just tell. It was just like Howie's a great hockey broadcaster, no question about it.
Yep. They're both, if you will, old-style radio broadcasters. So,
and as far as the color guys, my sentimental choice would be Bill Chadwick, because he was a pisser. He was when they would play in Toronto between periods, he would interview King Clancy, and they would just be laughing through the whole thing. And when they were in Montreal, he would interview
Red Fisher. Red
Fisher, thank you. And it was the same thing, because these guys knew each other for so long, and it's just a really fun time. And Bill used to mispronounce words like John Bendowski. He used to just mess up all the time. But you appreciated him because he knew what he was talking about when he got the words out right, and he was good. And but my overall choice would be John Davidson, because he knew everybody, he knew everything. He was an authority on everything in NHL.
What I loved about Chadwick was he would say anything at any time.
Yeah.
like when he got frustrated with Gene Carr's inability to put the puck in the net, his infamous line,
Couldn't put the
Gene
puck in the
Carr
ocean.
couldn't put the puck in the ocean if he was standing on the end of the pier. Wow.
Gene Carr got very upset about that. He just
really.
Why is he picking on me like that? I'm trying, but what?
Yeah.
But
well, Bill
right.
Chadwick has an interesting legacy too. Remember, he was a referee before that, and first guy to come up with doing the hand signals so fans knew what the calls were. I mean, that's pretty.
Yep.
And that was before. That's literally the first sport to ever do that. Like football copied that, and so there's
And not only that, another New York guy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He was blind in one eye too.
Oh, really?
And when the fans used to say that he was blind, he said, "Well, you're half right." He was fun. He was a lot of fun, and then he teamed very well with Gordon because Gordon was.
Oh yeah, two of them.
And Bill was interesting.
So getting back to JD for a minute as a color announcer, I mean, he was great on MSG. He was great on the national broadcast. But did you ever get a chance to see him on Hockey Night in Canada?
No.
Once we were able to get a satellite dish, we would get because now that I no longer live in the New York metro area and haven't for quite a while, we finally got a satellite dish, and as soon as I could subscribe to the NHL Center Ice package, I did, which meant if the Rangers weren't playing on Saturday night, I'd watch the Hockey Night in Canada broadcast. And they would do these in-between periods, segments.
Mm-hmm.
But between the second and third, they did this thing called Satellite Hot Stove. And they would have color commentators and columnists from sitting in studios in different parts of the country discussing just the general news of the week about the league. And JD was on that, Al Strachan, sometimes Mike Milbury, and others. Mm-hmm. And those segments were just outstanding.
Was Don Cherry on those at all?
Don Cherry had his own segment between the first and second period called Coach's Corner.
Oh, right. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And that was a whole other world unto itself.
Right.
Yeah.
But the Satellite Hot Stove was equally entertaining. You should try and look for that on YouTube or something to see some of those segments, because sometimes they were almost like a Saturday Night Live skit, the old the old thing with Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin. It was almost like,
oh yeah,
Mike, you ignorant fool.
Exactly right. Exactly.
Anyway.
All right, guys. We're running out of time now. And you got any closing comments?
This was great. I thought, good conversation, good points made. We got some really good favorites that some people may not have guessed. So that's always nice. And do it some more.
Yeah.
Once again, thanks for the opportunity.
Well, thanks for coming on. You really, you guys really made it interesting. It was probably the first 3-part show on the network. And we probably could have gone longer if we had more than 45 minutes of a clip. But, so anyway, next time we'll probably talk about the NHL rule changes, and then we'll do that towards the beginning of the season. So we'll start working on that. Okay, so thanks for listening. Thanks to Marc Weissman and Rich Isaak for being patient and being on for such a long time. And thank you for listening. I hope you've hung on for three shows. And we will be back soon. Good night.
Thanks.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.